what's new with Kickstarter? Yes. I'm Ryan Dancey, and
I'm Luke Peterschmidt.
And not on the slide.
I'm Max Bode.
Okay.
But he's in 3D space.
Max is going to join us, kind of an unscheduled guest. So there's a bunch of stuff in here about Luke and I, but I'll give you a quick rundown of Max and we'll talk about his project a little bit. Max was involved in Kickstarter for the pen that writes in plastic in 3D. So you want to talk a little bit about yourself?
So I'm Goblinworks. We're an R&D company, and we produced the 3Doodler, which is the world's first 3D drawing pen. It's essentially the tip of a 3D printer that's been turned into a compact, neat little pen that allows you to literally lift it up, and then you can draw in the air. Physical objects as well as flat two-dimensional objects, which can then be peeled off of surfaces, joined together to create additional three-dimensional objects. It's a very cool item. It has so many uses that we didn't see coming that our Kickstarter backers informed us of. It's already we have architects and visually impaired people are requesting it by the dozen to teach all sorts of things.
And how much did the Kickstarter raise?
We're at 2.3 million. We have 48 hours left.
Oh, you're still running?
Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. So you can check them out.
It's called the 3Doodler.
3Doodler. The video is great too, so I recommend that you check it out. And it's one of those products that if you back this thing, you're going to be able to tell people 5 years from now you backed it.
Yeah.
It'll be like the double.
In fact, he was our stretch goal for this panel, which we reached, so that's why. All right, so we talked about,
Oops, did I skip this already?
No.
Okay, here we go. I did 2 Kickstarters. Actually, I've done 3 Kickstarters, but I did 2 Kickstarters, but they're for the same product. So I did Kickstarters for Pathfinder Online, and I've raised 1.4 million total for the 2 Kickstarters, 307,000 for the first one and 1.1 million for the second one. And then Luke's done 4.
Yeah, I've done 4 Kickstarters. I'm more of the, when you guys talked about the middle range stuff, I have a company that does work for large toy companies, but I also have a group of friends that for fun we make games and put them on Kickstarter. So we've done 4. 3 are successful. 1 is on right now. I think our total raise is 150,000, grand, something like that. Our current Kickstarter, which you should definitely check out, is a game called Fairy Mischief. Launched about 3 or 4 days ago. It is a game designed to teach young girls to transfer from that horrible card game war into a more gamery thing, designed by my graphic designer and his wife for their daughter. So it's not a great Kickstarter because people don't shop on Kickstarter for kids. But if you know people with kids, I suggest you tell them about it because we all want to raise more gamer girls. And the art for that product was done by one of the most famous fairy artists in the world, and she gave it to us for almost nothing because she plays D&D.
So really quick background, I was responsible for creating, co-designing Legend of the Five Rings card game. Then I worked at Wizards of the Coast, and I was the vice president of tabletop role-playing games and the Dungeons & Dragons brand manager. I wrote the open gaming license, and I was responsible for shepherding the 3rd edition of Dungeons & Dragons into print. And Luke and I have worked together for a long time. Luke is going to tell you his own story, but there was an overlap time at Wizards of the Coast. We were both there together. But Luke, why don't you give him the quick CV?
I've done game design since '94 for collectible game industry mostly. A bunch of card game stuff. Worked at Wizards of the Coast where I switched to brand management. I managed a group of brand managers there for the non-Magic, non-Pokemon stuff. Left there, started Sabertooth Games. We did some collectible card games based on the Games Workshop properties. Games Workshop then bought that company. And then I went to go do consulting for large toy companies to teach them how to talk to geeks. So then I spent 5 years being the game designer for Bakugan. Anyone know what that is? Yeah, so that was mine. I'm sorry if you stepped on one and hurt your foot. Just finished up on Monsuno, which was a smaller project. For Bakugan, I did the game design and then everything that touched the consumer. The non-traditional marketing plan, I designed their ball tour, blah, 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 trade customer service staff. But this is the passion stuff, right? I'm in this industry to make stuff, so we're making more stuff than I have time with my major toy clients, so we do.
You want to talk about your background a little bit?
Sure. So I used to work for a toy company in Hong Kong doing R&D, specializing in robotics. So I did a product called Rovio, which is a wireless IP camera that hit market in 2009. I also did another product called RS Media, which was an extension of the RoboSapien line, and a bunch of other products in and out there. And then about in 2010, me and my business partner Peter Dilworth founded Goblinworks, where we have been doing consulting for the toy industry, creating items and then selling it into them. We developed the 3Doodler and realized right away that we didn't want to give this one to the toy industry.
Yay, Kickstarter.
Good decision.
Kickstarter. So yeah, and then we spent 3 months planning our Kickstarter campaign and then executing it, and now we're at
Right on.
2.3 million.
Lived in Hong Kong. I love that.
Yeah, lots of Hong Kong.
Okay, so we're going to ask you a couple of questions, which I think we've almost already asked. Is there anything else we want to ask? Oh, yes. How many people in the room have already done a Kickstarter project?
Already done.
Already done one. Okay.
Great. How many
Awesome.
have backed one?
Nice.
Thank you.
How many of you have backed a Kickstarter that wasn't a game, a video game, or a comic? Okay, excellent.
Was it a wallet?
Want to find those people. Who they are. Okay, so we were going to ask you if we wanted to talk about big projects or small projects, but we already covered that, so we're going to talk mostly about smaller projects. That seems to be the consensus outside. We'll talk about big projects later if people have questions. The one thing I just wanted to touch on really quickly, the most important piece of advice I have for everybody is that Kickstarter is a place to monetize your community, not a place to create a community to monetize. By far, this is probably the biggest problem that new Kickstarter project runners discover, that they launch their projects and then they try to create a community to talk to, and it doesn't work. You really have to try and find a community or build a community and then launch your Kickstarter to monetize those people's interests. So there's a community and they're ready to be monetized. Did you guys have a community for 3D Doodler, or did you go for it?
We focused on 3 communities. We focused on the crafting community, the artistic community, and the DIY community.
Yeah, yeah.
So it was a very specific and targeted.
Yeah, and the video definitely talks about it.
The video was,
Yeah.
And then the Etsy special that we did where we tied in Etsy artists as well.
Yeah, that was cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so Luke and I gave a talk similar to this 6 months ago at PAX Dev in Seattle. And instead of regurgitating the talk we gave then, we're going to give an essentially all-new talk because so much has changed in the 6 months between then and now. Clearly the biggest change is we don't have to explain what a Kickstarter is. We don't have to explain why you want to do one. We're not going to explain the mechanics of how you run one, and we're not going to talk about the issues involving like how to set it up and how to launch it and how to interact with Kickstarter itself, right? We think that you guys have figured that out, and so we're going to talk more about stuff that's actually happened with Kickstarters that have been successful and kind of lessons to be learned, and the takeaways that we've generated watching the thing basically over the last 6 months. Just a real quick note, Luke was on Kickstarter really early. He figured it out way early. And we were talking about it, the two of us, at Gen Con last summer. 2 summers ago?
2 summers.
2 summers ago. So we've been kind of watching Kickstarter now for almost 2 years, a little bit longer than that for Luke. So we've really seen a dramatic evolution from kind of where it was to where it is today. Amazing transition. If we lose anybody, you know, if we bring up a term or we talk about a tactic or something that you just don't understand, just raise your hand and we'll try and back up and cover that detail.
Trying to buzzword you to death.
Yeah, exactly, right. Okay, so in this section I'm going to run through about 6 projects that were really, really successful. All of these projects were in the hundreds of thousands of dollars, usually in the millions of dollars. But I don't really want to focus on how much money they raised. What I kind of want to focus on is the thing in that Kickstarter that we take away and say, this is a really interesting thing that happened or that these particular people did really, really well at that you can probably use for your Kickstarters almost regardless of how big they are. Some of these things work better when you have big Kickstarters. Some of them work better when you have a lot of parts in your Kickstarter. But we think all of them have some basic value to everybody's Kickstarter.
You should at least ask yourself why you're not doing it.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you're not doing it, say, why am I not doing this in my Kickstarter?
Right. So this is the Order of the Stick Kickstarter. They raised $1.2 million in February of 2012. And the takeaway from the Kickstarter was, wow, did they have an issue with reward level management. As time went on, the project runners kept adding more and more reward tiers because they kept doing limited item rewards, like 5, we'll do 5 of these, we'll do 10 of these, we'll do 15 of these. And in order to keep up with the demand for people who wanted to pledge to back the project, they had to keep adding more and more and more reward tiers. And at the end of the project they have, I think it's probably at least 3 dozen reward tiers. And some of which are like $1 difference, like there's a $12 tier and a $13 tier and a $14 tier. Okay, so lesson learned is you need to think about your reward levels in advance of doing your Kickstarter. Figure out what we want them to be. And then as your Kickstarter develops, and you add reward levels, which lots of Kickstarters do, you want to think about adding them in a way that's strategic and not creating a giant mess at the end that you're going to spend a massive amount of time trying to untangle.
So we call this a successful Kickstarter, right? He said these are all successful projects.
Yeah, very successful.
So he has a problem, but he raised $1.2 million.
Yeah.
So he hired two people, and those two people deal with the problem. If you're trying to raise $1,000 for you got the problem. You are not going to be able to deliver on time. And if Kickstarter goes on and more people commit to those deliveries, it's a problem. You can be trusted. And all of our Kickstarters figure out how to do that delivering on time.
Yeah. So Double Fine, the guys who did the first really big video game Kickstarter, they raised $3.3 million in March. The biggest thing that they did is blow the doors open. This is the Kickstarter that basically said to the rest of the world, holy crap, there's a lot of money to be made on Kickstarter, which is an interesting thing because up until that point, nobody thought there was this kind of money in Kickstarter. Order of the Stick actually closed before these guys, but it was such a weird anomaly, it really hadn't percolated yet. This thing, everybody woke up and went, holy smokes, that's awesome. We can do things with crowdfunding that no one ever thought was possible. Yeah, you're making a 3D
Brought to Mars.
in platinum.
Oh, yeah, Brought to Mars, yeah.
Well, that's the current one. Okay, so this is the Bones Kickstarter. Bones is a Kickstarter about miniatures. They did $3.4 million. They finished in August 2012. The big takeaway from Bones is the vampire level.
Bones hands, real quick.
Yeah, anybody pledge Bones? Okay, so for $100, you got the vampire level reward tier. And what that reward tier entitled you to was everything that they kept adding to the Kickstarter. So as they hit stretch goals, they added value to their $100 tier. And at the end of that Kickstarter, that $100 tier had blown up into this ridiculously valuable thing. They started, I think, with 64 miniatures, and they ended up with 300. And you don't pay anything extra for that, right? So there's two great things that happen with an exploding tier. The first thing that happens is that it creates a virtuous feedback loop. If I know that my pledge is going to get more valuable if more money comes in, then I become an evangelist to my friends. Like, I want you guys to pledge because my thing gets cooler, right? And the second thing it does is it creates this amazing pathway for stretch goals, where all the stretch goals suddenly make really, really great sense. And there's not this question of, well, why didn't you just put that in the game to start with? It's like, oh, no, we're leveling up the Kickstarter, right? We turned the Kickstarter into a giant game. How far can we push this thing? And people love games, and they love to win, and they won with Reaper.
Yeah.
It was massive.
Yeah, so the Reaper thing, again, for the smaller folks, they had a unique product. It was an injected plastic product, so their run cost, the cost per unit, was very low. It was very light, too, very easy to ship.
Yeah.
So not everybody can pull an exploding tier like that, but digital products can definitely do this, right? If you have an iPad or an iPhone game you want to make, and you want to give everybody $10 of free currency on your micropayment store, you can just make it 10, and then make it 20, and make it 30, and as that tier explodes, and that gets more and more value, the secondary thing is, if anyone's funded below the exploding tier, they will jump
upgrade.
up.
Yeah.
More people backed at $100 than anything under $100.
Yeah, that's right.
And nobody thought $100 was a sweet spot. In fact, Kickstarter themselves would tell you $25.
35, yeah, exactly.
25 to 35 is a sweet spot.
Yep. Yeah, they're wrong.
100. And
Yeah.
cool mini or not, 150.
Yeah. Yeah, Luke and I were just talking earlier today that, one of the messages we wanted to really express to you guys is, it's our thesis is that if you can get somebody to back a Kickstarter, they will probably give you $100. If you can't figure out how to offer them a value at a $100 price point, you are doing something wrong. They'll give it to you. Don't worry about what you think they have in terms of how much money they have to spend, or what you might hear people saying, oh, Kickstarter is really expensive. They probably will give you $100 if you make the offer compelling.
Yeah, there are some, and we're not saying you have to, right? There's a $15 game out right now that just blew the doors off.
Right.
Crazy. Yeah, so
They should have still done $100.
I agree they should have done $100, but they blew the doors off, because they were the one game that said, well, everyone else is doing X, we're over here.
We'll be the value price game. Okay, so this is the Numenera Kickstarter that Monty Cook ran. He raised $500,000, closed in September of 2012. So this is kind of, Monty Cook is kind of a gamer celebrity. He worked on 3rd edition and did now have the press afterwards. So he's kind of got celebrity in the hobby gaming world. But he really connected the dots in social networking. Monty and his girlfriend, Shauna Germain, they nailed the social component. They had the right updates at the right time on all the right places in a really positive, upbeat way that got people to retransmit, share with my friends, retweet, whatever. They activated that social network and they got a huge footprint for people paying attention to what they were doing and spreading the word to their friends. And that you can do that at any size Kickstarter. That's really a use your social graph comment.
Down in our booth, because we have the Fairy Mischief going right now on Kickstarter. If you buy product from us, we'll give you a great discount if we watch you put an update on Facebook about our game. Right? It matters, right? It matters. And you can't be shy about it. You got to just say, thank you for doing this.
Yes.
Will you please do this
Yes.
for us?
Yeah. You got to ask.
It's not me. You got to ask. It's like, in the old days, if you put click me on an internet ad, it was 400% more likely to be clicked.
Hugely valuable. Yeah.
Now we all know. But back then, it just helps to tell
Still
people.
works. Yeah.
Just do it.
Okay, this is the Kickstarter for a Kingdom Death monster, and this was a miniatures Kickstarter. Really high-end figures. They're a little bit adult, but really highly crafted, really good quality. They did $2 million. They ended in January of 2013. These guys were kind of the masters of the add-ons and the upsell. Their average pledge, I think, is like $250 or something. Maybe be higher than that now.
More than 300.
Yeah, it was way up there. And they did a great job of giving people lots of things they could add on to their Kickstarter, to their Kickstarter reward tier. So add-ons are a system that does not exist in Kickstarter. It's not a Kickstarter thing. It was completely created by the community of project runners. And basically what an add-on is you ask your backers to pledge more money than the reward tier that they are electing to get. And then they spend the extra money after the Kickstarter to get additional stuff added onto that tier a la carte. So instead of saying we have a $100 level and a $120 level and a $150 level, blah, 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 you just have a $100 level and then you have a bunch of add-ons. And the backers are savvy enough now to understand they pledge $180, they get the $100 level and $80 worth of add-ons. There's a big back-end process you have to go through to match up the dollars to the add-ons, kind of untangle people's questions about what they can and cannot get. But it is a hugely valuable thing from the standpoint of the project runners. It will substantially increase the amount of money you get from each individual backer.
There's also starting to be some third-party services.
Yeah.
The back end for Kickstarter reward fulfillment, I'm trying to be friendly, is less than efficient.
Yes.
So, like Reaper actually hired a programmer to program their own back end for reward fulfillment. There's a third-party company now that's doing it as well, which you might want to look at.
Kickmasters or something?
Yeah. Well, KickTrack is a great tool too.
Oh, we'll talk about them. Yeah.
So this is actually a reward fulfillment.
Oh yeah.
Match up the add-ons.
Takes over addresses and who gets what. So make it a very good stuff.
Okay, then it was our Kickstarter.
So our project goal is $1 million. I think we were the second Kickstarter that had a funding goal of $1 million. And as you know, Kickstarter's all or nothing. So if you don't get the million, we didn't get anything. And we ran our Kickstarter over the holidays. So we had a very long middle period in our Kickstarter where we needed to continue to raise revenue, not just wait and hope for the end. So we did a whole bunch of stuff on our Kickstarter that was designed to get people to pledge in the middle of the campaign. We raised at least a third of our money in the middle time in our campaign. Our campaign was 43 days, 47 days long. We raised a third of the money in 35 of those days. And it was a long, hard slog, but it definitely can be done. Don't let anybody tell you that there's no money to be made in the middle. You'll actually make a lot of the money in the middle.
Yeah, I talk about Ryan's campaign a lot, and not just as a friend, but it was, in my mind, one of the best campaigns done. A lot of campaigns that we just showed at the big successes met their goal, and then it was just about playing in what I call the foam, right? We've already won. Now it's what other cool stuff can I get, and it's fun. But if your goal is $1 million and you're going to make somewhere between 900 and 1.1, you're going to get there by busting your butt in the time when everybody else rests and says, yay, let's make new fun stuff. So every day, Ryan had some reason to get somebody back on there who hadn't backed, or some reason for them to share that. So and this goes for everybody. If you're trying to raise 50 grand and it's a slow start, don't think you can't make that middle, because normally you raise your money at the beginning, it drops and it comes back up. Work that middle.
Yeah, exactly. The conventional wisdom is it drops and goes back up. It doesn't drop to zero. right?
Yeah.
It actually drops to a very significant number. Don't give up in the middle.
Yeah, and a lot of the people you contact in the middle that you're trying to excite,
Yeah.
they're going to jump at the end, right? But you're still contacting them. Yeah, don't give up.
Don't give up in the middle.
Nope.
Fate Core. Fate is a variant of Fudge, which was one of the very first open source role-playing game systems. They did 400,000 and they completed their Kickstarter in January. I love these guys. Fred Hicks ran Fate Core Kickstarter. It's all about social networking and grassroots marketing. He had almost no budget, and it was just one guy hiring every day, figuring out who to talk to, how to get onto a podcast, how to get a mention on a blog, whatever it took. He figured out how to do something constantly. So there was some bubbling interest in this thing, and it just grew and grew and grew and grew and grew. There wasn't a single day when he rolled out of bed and said, I don't have to worry about a Kickstarter today. He was on it every single day.
Yeah, or all he did was check the number.
Yeah, no.
No checking.
No.
Have we scared anybody yet, or is there still guys who do it? It's hard work. It's not.
It's a product launch.
Yeah.
So I mean, product launch.
Combined with the social
Yeah,
campaign
yeah,
at the same time.
Yeah.
It's an insane amount of work.
And like the capital formation on top of all that.
Yeah.
So the last thing I want to mention is Kicktrack. This is a big thing that's changed in the last 12 months. There's a website, kicktrack.com, and he scrapes daily or hourly or whatever projects on Kickstarter and generates metrics that are better than the metrics that Kickstarter gives the project runners. So a lot of people are really focused on Kicktrack numbers, and I'm just going to caveat it by saying that a lot of those numbers have to be very carefully understood. You cannot jump to conclusions based on what you see on Kicktrack. He has a tool that generates projections, and within a certain cone, those projections may be valid, but it's easy to fall under the cone or over the cone. So if you are a project backer, if you're running a project, you need to be aware of Kicktrack, what it says about your project, because the project pledgers are going to know about it and they're going to ask you questions. And if it looks like you're under the cone for success, they're going to be asking you really hard questions. And if you're over the cone, you may have to deal with the, I don't have to back this project because it's going to be successful anyway problem. So it's in your best interest to understand Kicktrack and to be monitoring it on a regular basis. It also will give you some fairly actionable data.
Yes.
One of the things that you will be able to get out of Kicktrack is a day-by-day breakdown of how many people backed your project. So it will show you the total amount of money that was raised that day. It'll also show you how many backers joined the project on that day. The reason that's really meaningful is that you're going to likely discover that there are some days of the week that are better for you and some days of the week that are worse for you. And for our Kickstarters, we found that weekends were horrible for us. And our operating theory for that is that our Kickstarter was being driven very strongly by Facebook activity. And people use Facebook when they're at work, not when they're at home. So Monday through Friday was our biggest days, and then our weekends were terrible. I know of other Kickstarters that had really good weekends, and my default assumption is that it's a lot of word of mouth, and people are interacting with each other on weekends. And so that's when they would get people saying, hey, you got to check this Kickstarter out, and someone would go online and look at it. So you need to be watching Kicktrack to kind of understand the pattern, the flow of when your backers are coming to your site and backing your campaign.
And if you're running a smaller campaign, you might have a strange day where, for some reason you don't know, you get 112 backers.
Yeah.
Not the campaign's right about here. That's a meaningless blip.
Yeah.
But for a $50,000 campaign, 100 backers in the
It's
middle of a
huge.
campaign is a big deal.
Yeah.
You need to figure out why that happened.
Absolutely.
So undoubtedly, somebody ran a news story on you. Somebody mentioned you in a podcast.
Yep.
Will Wheaton has a picture holding your beard that you want to make in his hand.
Yeah.
Something. And we've been doing this long enough that we figure out why it works for other people, so that we try to repeat that. So if
Yep.
you do a second Kickstarter, know to go back to that blogger or that whatever.
Yep.
Thank that person.
Yeah.
Go post on their forum.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for viewing my product. I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
It is a community, so be appreciative.
Yeah, there's a huge reputation economy. You want to give back as much as given to you. So, you know, a lot of bloggers and podcasters, they do it because they want people to find their stuff. If somebody did something that gave you a positive impact, you know, give back, right? Go to that person's site, interact with them, make sure they know that you noticed and you're appreciative. And it's a huge deal. They really appreciate it.
Post a link on your site.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
mean, stuff like that, it's very important.
Yeah.
Reaching out to media and finding the right people in media organizations is very important. You shouldn't just call up the New York Times or something like that and be like, I have a Kickstarter, I want to do it. You should look through the list of reporters and see stories that they've written before and figure out who's doing what you're interested in selling.
Yeah.
And they'll be more receptive to you actually contacting them.
Yeah, but you've seen all the media at this show, right? They're all little podcast bloggers, all the way up to like people that are, Patcher reviewing for video games for the industry of stock exchange people. So, you know them, you go to their websites now. They're getting a little fatigued for you small board game folks. They're getting a lot of requests, please cover my board game. But that doesn't mean someone won't cover it.
Yeah, I would say 12 months ago, I'm doing a Kickstarter was an interesting story. It is not interesting anymore. Kickstarter is not interesting. Like, you're doing it isn't interesting. That's not a thing anymore. Everybody does it. Now it's, I'm doing an awesome board game for girls.
Yeah.
Or I'm the first person from Malaysia doing a Tagalog game for Americans. Whatever, right? Your angle is no longer, I'm doing a Kickstarter. That's over. It isn't going to sell any papers, so no one will care. You need to have a story that's different than I'm doing a Kickstarter.
Yeah, I'm sure single guys used to get dates by saying I did a Kickstarter. That's not working.
Yeah.
Really? I don't know. Frank, I'm done.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah. All right. Okay, so these are big problems. These are things we've seen other people do that we think are landmines. We want to help you avoid them. We're trying to coin a term here.
Yes. Underfunding. All right. Underfunding is the act of setting your funding goal lower than it needs to be for you to deliver the product at the quality you want to deliver it. So,
Why would you do that, Luke?
you would do that because you want to get artificial excitement at the beginning of your campaign because you've blown the doors off. And you want to go to stretch goals as fast as you can because you watch Cool Mini or not, right, man? They passed that $20,000 thing and it's like popcorn popping. Give me my free Cool Minis. Cool Mini or not is a company. They have no way any of those games cost $20,000 to make. $150, $180 minimum.
Yeah.
$180,000.
Just for the tooling.
So as a marketing ploy, a good one, ploy sounds
It
bad.
works.
It's nothing wrong, it's good.
Yeah.
For a company. If any of you are Cool Mini or not or have those resources, that's a reasonable strategy. If you think you're going to repeat that because you have a miniature game idea, the worst day of your life is when you make $23,000.
Yeah.
You are required to deliver these things. You will fail. And it hurts. This is not a thing you want to hurt on.
Yeah.
Take how much money you really need to deliver and not deliver a product that's okay. You're doing this because you want to, and I'm talking to the small people here, you're doing this because you want to deliver something that means something to you, right? That very mission means something to me. I really want it to work. I don't want to deliver it looking crappy, right? If I'm going to put stretch goals in, it'll be bigger, more, but it's not going to be better. I want to deliver the best game I can is a pitch. Here's a crappy game, but it might get better once we hit stretch goals is death. For small. For Cool Mini or not, do it. Go for it.
It's just a huge risk. It really is. If you pick a goal that's too low because you think it's a great tactic and you get stuck with a really low funded project, you will be unhappy. And your backers will be unhappy, and you'll kind of pollute the water for your ability to do future Kickstarters. So don't do it.
Yeah, I've done 4 now, so yeah.
Yeah, we picked $1 million goal for our Kickstarter because we didn't believe we could look our fans in the eye and say we were going to do it for $1 less than $1 million. And it might have been a lot better strategy mechanically to say we were going to do a $500,000 funding goal and then hit stretch goals. But we couldn't deliver the product for $500,000, so we just didn't do it. It wasn't for us. It wasn't the right thing to do.
Careful with that.
Yeah.
Dangerous waters.
Cost of shipping.
Yeah.
I have a digital project, and I work with Pi, so I don't have a problem with cost of shipping. But Luke,
I'm going to talk about shipping. Okay, so if you were in the Kickstarter room today or yesterday or tomorrow, you will see a box for our latest Kickstarter game that ships in 6 weeks called Castle Dice. It's a big, heavy box, 65 dice, all kinds of cool stuff in it. The box we ship in will not be that shape. It will be the shape that exactly fits into a flat rate shipping box because it saved us $4 a unit. So when you're shipping a couple thousand units, $4 a unit, that's the difference between making money and not making money. We know a good friend of ours, Stan, who made a really great little book, essentially lost all of his profit when the Postal Service just raised their rates between December and January. And he had no control over that. That wasn't a mistake on his part. It was just like out of his control. It just sucked. Be very careful with your shipping costs. International, crazy. Shipping Castle Dice International went from like $52 to $82.
Kickstarter won't let you choose country rates for different countries,
Yeah.
so your international rate is just one rate.
Yeah.
So you have to overestimate that for the worst and for the best.
and a lot of people internationally have no idea what it will cost you to ship them something.
Yeah.
When they order from Amazon, Amazon does not pay $60 to ship them a book. Amazon is a flat rate deal.
Yeah.
So they will be shocked when you tell them how much money it will cost to ship the product.
Yeah, and there's people that are doing some clever workarounds. Probably not possible for folks here. A friend of ours at Cypher, they are doing a miniatures game, and they have a partner in Spain. So they're
Oh, so
both
they're
shipping
European
to
shipping.
Spain,
Yeah.
and the guy in Spain is shipping it all through Europe.
We're using distributed shipping as well. So
Yeah.
we're shipping into the United States and into Europe to then ship out. But we're using logistical fulfillment centers. Because we have the quantity necessary to do that.
I do not.
But if if you're in the thousands of units, you're right on that edge of being able to actually use logistical fulfillment.
Be careful. Before you run your Kickstarter, you need to sit down and have a long discussion with your local post office.
Yeah.
And literally, just go down there and talk to them. They'll talk to you about it. And you're going to learn some frightening things. But you need to know, because otherwise it will, like Luke says, it could cost you all the profit you made, or even put you in a loss. Like you could end up having to write a check out of your own checkbook.
It certainly happened.
Yeah, many times. Business issues. Okay, so Luke and I are going to write a book, and we've been working on chapter by chapter, and I wrote 30 pages on like forming your company and setting up your accounting. That's not Kickstarting. That's a whole different book. So the one-page summary is you need to have a company. We recommend you do a corporation. You need to have separate bank accounts for everything you do with your Kickstarter, and you need to have in writing all the deals with your partners. So if you design a game with somebody, you and that person need to have a written deal that sets out all the specifics about copyright, splitting the royalties, the revenue, who owns what.
What happens if one of your partners gets hit by a bus? And then the spouse gets the ownership, and the spouse hates you.
This doesn't have to be hugely expensive. We're not saying go spend 10 grand on an attorney.
Just do it.
Some of the strongest contracts are written by amateurs because they don't know the lawyerly tricks to make them weak. So Luke was telling me a story earlier today about a guy who was at a show, which I think was this show, not this year but in previous years, who couldn't show his game on the show floor because his business partner and he had a falling out, and his business partner wouldn't sign the release.
That's bad. How many of you? Oh, yes.
Was that in the movie Indie?
Yes, it was. It was Indie Game the movie.
I saw that.
Yeah.
I teared up to the very end of the documentary.
Yeah, that is a frightening, accurate representation of what happens when you.
Server, sometime was kind of heartbreaking.
The name of that movie is Indie the movie, right?
Indie Game the movie. So it's worth watching if anybody want to make a software project. It will teach you what it takes for two guys to make a game.
Okay, so taxes. So it turns out that the federal government expects to get paid when you make money. There are a lot of very complicated tax issues depending on how big and sophisticated your project is. If you're doing a relatively small tabletop gaming product, you're probably going to dodge most of these issues. But the more units you make and the more money is involved, the more likely you are going to sit down with an actual CPA and figure out how to do your taxes. In addition to the federal income tax, you may have some state and local tax like business and occupation tax. There may be sales tax consequences, which nobody has figured out yet. There are questions about revenue recognition. Do you recognize the revenue when you get the money from Kickstarter, or do you recognize the revenue when you ship the Kickstarter rewards? Are you recognizing all of the revenue, or do you get to recognize just the revenue that you get from Amazon payments? There are a lot of questions about taxes. So if you're doing a relatively small project, I would say relatively small is like less than 50 grand. Use TurboTax. You'll be okay. If you go much beyond that, go talk to a CPA.
And what you also find is there's not an agreement. So
that's right. These are all issues to be debated.
Our first product did 65 grand. We got the money in November, but we didn't ship the product till the next year. So what year was that revenue in, right? And I talked to my accountant, and he's like, I don't know. I'm like, thank you, accountant. He's like, look, there's no case law on this.
Nobody knows.
So he said, it seems to me like it's a pre-booked sale. So he said, you can recognize the revenue next year. And he said, but if we get audited, I'm going to say that, and they might say I'm wrong. But at least it was a legitimately straight up honest attempt. I wasn't trying to dodge the tax. I just didn't know what to do. So
we're not. You're not an attorney, right?
No, but
don't
I actually have an attorney.
We're not attorneys.
Don't take legal advice from games.
Taxes, a big problem.
Probably a stronger issue.
So bad messaging. One of the biggest problems we see with Kickstarters is that they don't know how to talk about what they're trying to kickstart. And they do themselves a lot of damage by misrepresenting the project or by telling people things that aren't likely to sell. The example I was using with Luke earlier today is the pity party. You're not going to get people to back your Kickstarter if you go on there and tell people, oh, woe is me. I'm having a horrible life. No one likes my game. I can't get this thing published unless you help me. That project will not make any money.
Or the, hey, I'm super rich and famous because you know me from being super rich and famous, but I need your help. No, you don't. There's been, I mean, we joke that all the time.
I mean, that kind of worked, right? I mean, they got the Star Trek thing done like that.
Sometimes.
Worst movie.
Yeah, sometimes it works. Most often it doesn't.
Yeah.
Because Kickstarter still has this sort of lingering, it's like eBay. eBay started as Pez selling, right?
Yeah.
And then it became a business thing. But you can still sell your Pez there. So there's a lingering thing in Kickstarter about dream fulfillment. And it is real. Like, people still want to back people they believe in, they like the idea, like the person. They like what the things like they're trying to accomplish. So telling someone I'm really rich, I'm rich, I need your help, it's the exact opposite. You feel like they're trying to scam you.
Yeah. So one of the things that we'll hold over from our previous presentation is this question of honesty and truthfulness. It's probably the biggest thing we can advise you to do proactively. Be really, really, really honest and very, very, very truthful. Especially with a Kickstarter, you're going to have a lot of eyeballs on you, and if you lie, people will find out and they will out you. And that's even worse than lying, right? Because then you're a known liar, which is a terrible place to be.
Yeah, honesty.
Yeah, honesty.
In good and bad.
And the last thing is just bad projects, right? There's a bunch of stuff on Kickstarter that probably shouldn't be Kickstarted. There's people who went too early. They didn't have a game ready to Kickstart. They didn't have a well-formed idea of who their customers were. They mismatched. They put a video game project in the art category, or they tried to do a business idea, not a project. Kickstarter wants to be about projects, not about companies. You really need to think long and hard about what it is you're actually trying to Kickstart to make kind of sure in your own mind that you're not just rushing because it's exciting. This Kickstarter thing might end. My buddy just did a Kickstarter, and I need to get in there now. You could run off a cliff like Wild Coyote. And I would be a little more Dancey. So
Facebook in particular has become at assisting the spread of mental stuff to spread light. This is by far the best tool. I don't know if Google Plus is going to pick up to that, but right now Facebook is blowing the doors. So you need to have a Facebook page for your project, separate from Kickstarter. Right? You need to have an active page for that thing, and you need to be interacting on that page because those interactions will show up in the wall of people who like that page. One of my enduring frustrations with Kickstarter is there is a Facebook like button on the project page. It is worthless because the project backers, people who run that project, can't do anything. So my Cat Hunter Online page has something like 15,000 likes, but I can't message them. I have to get to like my page on that Facebook, not the like button on Facebook.
So what is that? The first thing is what you are seeing 5 or more technical files out of Kickstarter. I am seeing a ton of my friends that could be $1 million everything not going to go. That's good to know because I'm a little worried that eventually, because all the time I'm making
The thing that I really recommend is that you actually do marketing. So AdWords is a Google product, and Facebook ads is a Facebook product. And the thing you need to know about this is that you can set the budget. So you can run an AdWords campaign with $5, and there's no downside. The only time you pay when you use your AdWords with Facebook is if somebody clicks the link. Right? Now, you're not going to get a whole lot of responses to the $5 marketing campaign, but you can get more than you can with $0. I found that our Facebook ads for our first Kickstarter were almost super support. In our second Kickstarter, they were the best campaigns that we ran. So in 6 months between our two Kickstarters, Facebook has done whatever we knew they needed to do to make those ads work really, really well. And I highly recommend you setting up an AdWords account or a Facebook ad account is free. So don't let the money get in your way. Throw whatever money you can at marketing. Don't write off and say, I don't have a marketing budget. Forego the latte.
Our banner ad campaign. Banner ads are a relatively sophisticated marketing tactic, and you probably need to do a little research before you run a banner ad campaign to understand how to make them work. One of the challenges is that the backer info that you get on Kickstarter does not do a good job of attribution. So somebody clicks a link on KickTrack and gets your project page. Kickstarter is probably not going to correctly attribute that connection to KickTrack. There are a few tricks you can try, and we can talk about them later if we have time, but right now their attribution tool is really, really, really poor, which means it's hard to optimize. And you might run a bunch of banner ads and not know if they're working or not, which is, in today's modern internet advertising world, is unacceptable, but that's just the way it is, right? The KickTrack guys will tell you There is a specific profile right now, people who are likely to be responsive to a KickTrack ad, and they're very upfront about who they think is viewing their page, and if you're not kind of in that demo, you could probably save that money.
Have they moved? Because I met at a Kickstarter for my last project, and they were just starting to take ads.
Yeah.
So it's a flat rate, like, we don't even know what we're doing quite yet kind of ads. I'm not sure where they are now. They may have moved on.
There's no other, I mean, KickTrack's run by one guy.
Yeah.
So he only has a limited amount of time and effort. The Nano-like guys did actually
Yep.
run some numbers through their banner ad on KickTrack. So,
Yeah, they have a lot of repetition with what you need to make that work. So they pay a lot of money
Get some traffic, right?
And don't let Ryan scare you. Ryan's a data analysis guy. He runs crazy stuff. If you're running a smaller thing, keep it simple, stick on AdWords, stick on Facebook.
Yeah.
which is what I recommend.
I'm just reinforcing your brilliant opinion.
Okay, so if you have the opportunity to have a couple
Couple of people, 3 people, 4 people, 5 people involved in Kickstarter, it will make things work a lot better. I think there's basically 3 really big roles that you need to fill. And if you're doing it all by yourself, you get to fill all 3 roles, but it's really hard to do all 3 of these things. So the first thing is the project manager. Somebody has to be paying attention to the details. Every day of your Kickstarter should have a plan. You should be planning to do things like talk to podcasts, talk to bloggers, whatever it is that you're doing for that day on the Kickstarter, you need to be executing on a plan. If you are going to be producing material like videos or graphics or an email message or a Facebook page, somebody has to be managing that process to make sure that it gets done and all the T's are crossed and all the I's are dotted. So you definitely want to have, at a minimum, if it's just you, you are the project manager. Don't get fired. Don't let Trump tell you that you failed. Second thing is your communicator and your evangelist. It would be best if you have somebody who is spending a significant amount of the time in the workday interacting with people who are likely to be interested in your Kickstarter. Not just interacting on your Kickstarter, but like going out, like you said, to communities like the maker community, the 3D art community, right? You need to proactively evangelize this Kickstarter to people who might not otherwise have heard of it. One of the biggest problems with your Kickstarters is going to be raising awareness. People just aren't even going to know that it exists. If they knew, they might back it because they think it was cool, but they don't even hear about it, right? So you want to try to get somebody in that role during business hours, going around and talking to people, interacting with people, because that's when everybody reads at their computer, that's when you're likely to get that traction.
I'm going to give you a cheap one there real quick. Go on other forums of places that are on the sites and change your SIG file to reference your Kickstarter.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And then just post relevant posts about whatever you're posting, not addy stuff.
Yeah.
And right under your SIG file have your name and check out my Kickstarter
Yeah.
or my Kickstarter.
Yeah.
It's free, act well in the community, it works.
And if you get a volunteer, somebody says they'd like to, grab them.
Yeah.
Don't be overly concerned about somebody like misrepresenting you or saying crazy ass stuff. Fix that later. And then the last thing is audiovisual and graphic design. So I'm a startup junkie. Goblinworks is my 5th startup, and I have been running startup businesses now for close to 20 years. And it used to be that being a startup entrepreneur meant mastering spreadsheets. In the Kickstarter era, it's mastering video production. Who knew? You can shoot reasonably good video with reasonably good sound for a reasonably low price. We shot a bunch of video for our first Kickstarter on my iPhone. You can use iMovie to edit it. Today, we're using a camera that we bought at Costco and a microphone that I bought at Fry's, and I edit in Final Cut Pro. And our entire investment in our entire AV team is probably $1,500, which we use to make video updates and all kind of other stuff. So it's not really Kickstarter. If you're going to do a Kickstarter, you need to sit down and you need to watch where you record a video. You're going to really quickly recognize some very common mistakes. A background hum is incredibly disturbing, and it will drive you crazy. People will not listen to your video because the hum will drive them nuts. Being out of focus is easily fixed, right? You should not post a video that's out of focus or that has bad lighting. If you have a window behind you and the light is all blown out, you're losing a lot of detail and you can't see what's going on, that's bad. Or if it's too dark. A lot of people make their videos on webcams on their monitors, and they sit in a dark office and the light from their monitor is on their skin, which makes them look like corpses. That's fine if you're doing a zombie game, but not if you're not. So ideally, you'll have somebody who's really good at AV and graphic design. In Kickstarter, in a Kickstarter project page, you can have little headers, which are graphics, and it's really helpful. You're going to probably build
show them ideas about what to do with the Kickstarter rewards if you get them, or you just want to have some icons and say, hey, if you back this project at this level, here's the 15 you can get. Having somebody around who's relatively good at Photoshop is great. This person does not have to do this during normal business hours. If you have a friend who gets to throw an hour in, once or twice a week at night, it's probably okay. It's not the kind of thing you definitely need to have somebody do 8 hours a day working on a Kickstarter. But the more professional you get that stuff, the better off the whole Kickstarter project is.
It can be too professional, right? If you've got, some voiceover by James Earl Jones, people are going to think you don't need the money.
Yeah.
So it's okay. Just look at a really good video. Think about the Blair Witch Project, right? A major movie made on a little budget because they embraced little budget. Our video for the fairy game is drawings with the voiceover, but it gets the message across. So don't let the video and audio in particular be so bad the message doesn't get there.
Yeah.
You're not making a major motion picture.
Nope.
You're communicating a message. So the reason that background noise thing is so important is because a lot of people listen with headphones at work. And if you don't listen to your thing with headphones and without, you could have a bunch of people working with you.
Can't listen to it. Yeah.
Also, I see this quite a lot in a lot of Kickstarter videos. Product first.
Yeah. You talk
Show
about
the product
Yeah.
first.
Yeah.
Then you can talk about yourselves.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
don't do yourself first and then the product.
That's a great point. You can think about your video and your project page as a heat map. Hot to cold. Hot is where most people are paying attention. Cold is where least people pay attention. Okay. The hottest part of your video is the beginning 10, 15 seconds. That's the part everybody can see. The longer the video goes on, the more people stop watching. Same thing with your project page. Stuff at the top is what everybody sees. Stuff at the bottom is what the least amount of people see. And what you want to do is put the payload, the most important part of your project pitch, in the hot part. So show the product at the beginning of the video and at the top of the project page.
Yeah.
Okay, we're gonna do 5 minutes of Q&A. I think we could probably. I know that Yancey Strickland has asked all of his investors to never sell. I think we're going to skip this. Okay, so this is the part of the presentation where you get to ask us questions. Okay, so we'll just start at the front and we'll go back. I think we have a lot of questions, so let's try and do one question a person until everybody's had a chance. So yeah, go ahead.
So I know you got your Kickstarter funded really early.
Yeah.
And so how did you get that community, such a big community, so early?
So we spent 3 months planning out our Kickstarter, and we spent 1 month before the Kickstarter reaching out to press. So we were pre-prepared at the date of launch to actually launch articles at that time. So, we reached out to about 15 media entities. Like I said, one of those guys I already knew from another thing. We went out and we found people that were interested in what we were doing because they'd already been interested in that space. And then we convinced them to write articles through calling them, through bugging them, through emailing them, and through doing some cute, unique things to try and get them interested in it. We didn't expect... Yeah, hookers. No, actually what we did is we 3-doodled the reporters' faces.
Oh, that's awesome.
And then we did the logos.
Oh, they're
of
also
companies.
narcissists. That's fantastic.
And then we videotaped all of that, and we sent them to the reporters with a little thank you note for your consideration, and we sent them the links to the videos so they could post it on their blogs, on their forums, and their whatnots. And then we kept everyone under something called embargo, to prevent them from releasing early, and then we got everyone to release at the exact same time on the same day, although one guy released early, so we had to release our Kickstarter early as a result. Because if someone releases early, there were literally people sitting on our page waiting for the product to open up. So that was the key to our big blowout, was that we spent a lot of time preparing and getting some media interest before the Kickstarter. And that means prepare is the best advice I can give you on a Kickstarter.
No ready, fire, aim.
Yeah, no,
Ready, aim, fire.
Yeah.
Ready, aim, fire.
Hi.
Okay, right here.
Currently, we have a small team of 4 preparing a software product that has members, or the members of the team have worked on prestigious software titles
Awesome.
way back in like the early 90s.
Okay.
Even better.
So they have some celebrity.
A little bit.
Yeah, okay.
And it's dissipated. We don't know if the community is still there or willing to invest in a new product.
Okay.
Our goal mark is around the $200,000 mark to cover the cost of living for all four of us to produce the game for 1 year.
Okay.
Do you feel that a larger asking price would be appropriate, or since we don't really know whether our social community will come flocking to us even once we put the press out there, to keep it at some like a safe goal? We don't really have a lot of stretch goals at the moment, aside from like have a free wallpaper soundtrack,
Yeah.
things like that.
Can you get it done for 200 grand?
Yes.
That's your number.
That's your number.
So I would
That
say,
simple.
I would say the first thing I would focus on is answering this question of whether or not there's a community for your celebrities. You don't have to do a Kickstarter to find that out. Each of those guys should have a Facebook page and a Google Plus page and a Twitter account, and they should be active in their role as a celebrity. They should be talking about what they love about the games that they work on, and looking to attract people who like those games to interact with them. Gamers love interacting with the creative people behind the games that they play. So they should try to re-attract or attract that audience. A lot of those games from the 90s, they have pretty active communities. If you Google them, you'll find there's a website somewhere where some guy's been keeping this game alive for 15 years.
I'm going to brag about his Cuber scored me today. So.
Yeah.
Well,
Is it Cuber?
No.
That's I know a guy.
It's a psychological horror game called Sanitarium.
Okay.
And the thing is, like, there's a huge Sanitarium fan base and
Awesome.
all that stuff, but we're not really doing the sequel to that yet.
Yeah, that's okay. You want to make so the human connection is more important than the game connection, right? You made something I loved. I want to know who you are as a person, and it's just something intrinsically awesome about that people respond to. That's why authors write books in many genres. Their fans follow them from genre to genre because they like that author. They know something about that person. So your celebrities need to get on the horse and make that happen. To answer, to respond to Luke's thing about the $200,000, price point for software, my opinion is that you can evolve what I would call the minimum viable product, which is it meets all of the design objectives that you have for it, and it hits a quality bar that you consider to be acceptable, and that's what it's going to cost. If you raise less money than that, you have a huge risk of delivering something that's going to do more harm than good. And you definitely don't want to pitch it as, this is what's going to pay our living expenses for a year.
Yeah.
Right? Nobody on Kickstarter wants to pay you a salary.
Right.
They want to pay you to get an awesome video game. So you need to focus on the idea of budgeting the project, not you. Yeah.
And leverage those celebrities as an example of that you have experience.
Right. You're credible.
Yeah.
Credibility matters.
Yeah.
All right.
I was just wondering if you could talk a little bit more about the Facebook ads. When you're targeting the landing page, do you want people going right to the Kickstarter, or are you talking about Kickstarters as far as your page goes for the interaction and then get them there? Because most of my Facebook ads, I promote the page that I have for like my shop or something like that.
So that's a great question. So
Repeat the question for folks in the background.
yeah. So the question is, if you are going to do a Facebook ad, should the ad target? What should the ad target? Should it target your Facebook page? Should it target the Kickstarter page? I actually ran a landing page separate from Kickstarter that fed to my Kickstarter page. So I used a website called Ubounce and as a template for making landing pages. And I did that because I was going to do like 7 or 8 different versions, and I wanted to see what kinds of things people were responding to. It's called A/B testing. That's probably way high end for people who want to do smaller size Kickstarters. So my advice would be have it go to the Kickstarter page. Your objective is to minimize the number of steps between I'm interested in this thing and I'm giving you money. If you add steps in the middle for the purposes of analytics and you can do something useful with analytics, it's probably a benefit. But if you don't have the time or you don't have the knowledge, send them right to the page. And in fact, I had a Facebook ad running for a while that actually went to the pledge page. So it skipped the project page and just went right. If you click the pledge button, that's where that ad is.
I hope they were smart. That's why they raised the wage.
I want to just give me the money, right? So then what you do is, once you've got people who have backed the project, you can communicate with them directly, and then you ask them to like your Facebook page.
Okay.
So you kind of reverse engineer that.
Because from what I understand, I could be wrong, depending on what kind of ad you pick, it shows up in different places for people. And I feel like people, because I've done it for my Etsy shop, and
Yeah.
I feel like when I'm promoting just for my shop,
Yeah.
you're getting the ad here on the side,
Yeah.
and people are blocking this out.
Yeah.
And if I promote my page,
Yeah.
I'm getting in people's feeds.
Yeah.
And then I try and capture them and get them to the shop from there.
Yeah.
Do you think it's worth it all trying to do both? Or just put all my money just to go straight to the Kickstarter?
Whatever they did in the last 6 months is working really well.
Yeah,
And I don't know what it
it's
is.
fabulous.
I can't explain it. I don't know what they did, but it's working. So having your ad in the sidebar is probably okay. It may not be the most efficient use of the money. I don't know. I don't have good enough analytics to tell them that. But it worked for us. So I would say just go for it.
Okay.
I think there's a question over here. Yeah, right there.
I am really new to Kickstarter.
Okay.
I went to it when
Welcome.
it launched. I went to it when it launched, but it was like, I need my fence fixed. Can you give me $5,000 project? So I just ignored it. But I got a real growth that I want to do in one of my projects that's been going on for 8 years. So it's existing. I know how to do it, but I need to take it to the next level. I was thinking of taking pledgers and preceding them. I don't know if that's like a good idea or not, but like famous people that I know will back me, like as sponsors.
Yeah.
But run them through Kickstarter, even though I'm gonna lose the 5% to get their money. I could just go ahead and have them write a check, but I feel like their fame would help my project if I preceded it the first day or first week. Is that a good idea?
All right, so I'll say two things. One, it's 9%. It's 5% to Kickstarter and 4% to Amazon. That's what we're all thinking of here. We said 5%. we know those percents, they hurt. You don't need them to back you. It's nice if they do. What you want is a quote from them.
Yeah.
If they're famous.
If they're famous, and they matter. It's like those old ads, right? I had some famous people, famous in the gaming industry, like game reviewers. I had them pre-review Castle Dice. I got their quotes, and I put them up. I didn't really care if they backed, but I wanted Geek Dad to say my game was good, right? And it mattered. So I wouldn't worry about the backing thing. I would just get them to give you good quotes.
There is a certain mentality. This gets back to that funding on the first day thing. There's
That's
a certain,
what I was thinking about that dollar amount.
there's definitely a certain momentum sense that occurs when a project gets rapidly funded. There's no doubt people like to back a winner. Like I said before, that Kickstarter is like a game, and if it's already funded, everybody wins. I wouldn't discount that value to zero.
That's what I was thinking, because I wanted to raise like $100,000, but I know I can get 30 up front right now.
Yeah.
But it's like, do I lose 9%?
Yeah.
I thought it was fine.
So the flip side to that is, let's just say for the sake of argument, you pick that $50,000 funding goal, and you have a day to go, and you're at $40,000. It would be awesome if you could make a phone call and have a guy pledge 10 grand.
Yeah.
Right? Because Kickstarter is all or nothing. So if you miss that funding goal by $1, you don't get any of it.
Yeah.
So if you know you have a couple of guys that will put 30 grand in, it might not be a bad idea to just use them when you need them.
So, and I'm going to talk about a related issue, about a campaign that I saw recently.
Are you really?
I am. I'm not going to mention it, but I can free later. And there was a campaign that was run that had a $10,000 goal, and it got hit the first day. But if you check ClickTrack, there were 4 people that backed on the first day, and the highest funding level was $2,500. So it was pretty suspicious about who was putting that money. It made any sense. And people got that. They looked at ClickTrack and they didn't think he had a big success because the number of backers was so small. If he had $10,000 the first day from 1,000 backers, it would have been, oh, this is a huge hit. But it just looked like the guy put his money in.
Do you think he was trying to just promote his
Yep.
own reputation?
Because at some point, he got to $20,000 and mysteriously someone backed out for 10 grand. Because you can back out if it takes you under the funded goal.
Yeah.
On the last day.
On the last day.
Yeah.
So he waited until there was enough to make sure he got the 10 he wanted for the campaign. Or maybe I'm insinuating, I could be wrong. I don't want to besmirch or be libelous because there's a camera.
Too late for that.
But anyway, mysteriously $10,000 came out. So if I was going to use an example of what would look fishy, that would look fishy.
But you should also think about the fact that, Amazon payments can fail.
Yep.
And you should estimate a 1 to 2% failure rate.
Yep.
So you explain what fail means.
Oh, sorry. So someone says they want to back it, and then it goes through their credit card, and then it doesn't process.
The credit card's quick.
Or the credit card's bad,
Yeah.
or the person was a joke and it was a fake Amazon account or something like that.
Or they died.
Or something. Crazy
happens,
things
right?
happen.
Percentage.
And so you should guesstimate a reasonable percentage that you're going to lose no matter what.
It's a bad bet.
It's a bad bet.
Yeah.
So you always want to go a little over.
And you'll actually have some disputes. We had more than I was expecting. We had disputes for our Pathfinder Online Kickstarter, and we argued all of them and won all of them. But there are people that are going to pledge and then come back after the pledge with buyer's remorse and decide that they want to complain and not pay.
I had none of those. All right, back.
So we have like a game-related service that we're working on.
Okay.
And so
I did one of those once.
Say what?
I did one of those once.
Okay, yeah. So the question is, we want to frame it as a project, right? And so it's about, I guess, figuring out how to represent it as, I guess, a chunk of what we're doing that will help us get to a certain point. So it's sort of like any advice you have for that.
Who's your customer? Is it a company or is it an end user?
End users, so
Yeah,
it's
that
like PC gamers.
So this is a great question. So this is one of those places where you have to think about what category you're going to put the product into. So Double Fine Adventure is a documentary film. It ran in the video game category, but if you watch the video, you're paying to get a documentary. Tim Schafer says right up front, we might fail completely, this may never happen, but you'll get to watch us fail in public, right? So even if Kickstarter had objected, which they wouldn't, but even if they had objected to the video game concept, they would have been able to fall back and say, people are backing us to see a documentary. So you can be creative with the project, right? You could say we're going to do a book or a web series or a documentary about our service. If you can roll up part of your service into an atomic unit and sell that as a project, we're running a project to build the biggest database of gamers in the world, right? It doesn't, there is no requirement that the project that you run is the rewards that you offer.
Your Pathfinder first one.
Yeah. For our first Kickstarter, the primary reward in the reward tiers was a tabletop role-playing game book, and our project was to make a technology demo for an MMO. So you can offer stuff as rewards that isn't directly related to the project you're trying to back. And Kickstarter seems to be reasonably flexible in their definition of project, especially if it's creative or interesting. Yeah, they don't really like a lot of copycat stuff, and they're not really looking to let you start a business idea necessarily. But if we had a friend of mine, Russ Morrissey, ran a campaign to rebuild EN World. His website had got hacked, and it was costing a lot of money to kind of build it from the ground up. And he talked to Kickstarter, and they said, sure, we can figure out how to make that look like a product. So and we probably should have said this at the beginning, for all, especially the tabletop gaming people, Luke at Kickstarter.com, is the curator for the gaming section. And if you have questions or you don't know how Kickstarter will feel about something, just email him.
Yeah, Luke is fantastic.
Yeah, he wants to get your feedback. So you could just talk to him and see what they say.
Yeah, they've grown that Kickstarter game team really well.
Yeah.
They've added really smart people who know us.
Yeah.
It's fantastic, yeah.
That's great. Thank you.
Sure.
All right, so yeah, right here.
Question, what if you don't have a singular project, you just have an idea, right? So you're in ideation phase.
You're way too early.
Yeah.
Put together a team that can make that a reality.
Okay, so.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
You're just in the ideation phase, you wouldn't recommend Kickstarter whatsoever, right?
No, Kickstarter is for projects.
Yeah.
And before you do a Kickstarter, you need to have a really clear idea of what it is that you're going to actually produce.
Yeah, so let me give you an example of what I think might be close to the kind of thing you're talking about. Somebody launched a game play space in LA, I forgot what the name of the thing was. And it's basically a cool, big, huge place where people will play games. They're going to invite in like designers to give lectures. They're going to have professional play testing space. That felt like an idea, but he took it the next step and said, not just I have an idea for a place for all gaming brain power to go. He said, I'm going to figure it out, right? So he put someone on board, they had cool schematics drawn up, and he had someone from companies talk about it. So he went that one extra step. It still felt like an idea to me, but there was an end to it.
Feels like an idea to me too. All right, yeah, right here in the yellow shirt. That's you? Yep. Oh, put my shirt.
Yeah, right.
Any thoughts on cross-support in Kickstarters? Like I've seen some Kickstarter games in particular that will be launching around the same time, and they'll have products for people who support both or pledge to both.
Not actually allowed.
Yeah.
So in Kickstarter, you have to have the control of whatever you offer. So I can offer you a copy of Flamewar, recently successfully launched. But I can't say, and I've talked to my friends over Pathfinder Online and the 3D pen guy, and if you pledge at this level, you get both. I have to actually have physical control. Now I can't say, I have at home a couch, and you can have that at $1,000, because I have control over it, even though it's not the project. Right? That's selling things that aren't the project.
Yeah.
But I have to have physical control.
saying, because I know many Kickstarters, including my own, that put other products.
Okay. You can do all kinds of cross-support, though. There are rules about what you're allowed to put in your updates. You can't cross-sell in an update. So I made, and you only find these things out by kind of
doing it and then getting told you're not supposed to do
yeah.
that.
So we had backers for a game, and I wanted to make a benefit for all Fun to 11 games that we will tell you about our Kickstarter campaigns a day early. So that there's limited rewards, you get a day, and we're not going to tell anybody it's out. We won't start our marketing campaign. You get 1 day. It's my reward to you guys as a thank you, right, for being a good customer. Well, that's not allowed. Because I was telling them about, through the update channel, a product that was not theirs. Now I put that in my rewards thing, so that now it's a reward function that I'm delivering through the update channel, but I couldn't do it before.
It's fuzzy though, because like there was another project that got started called the 3Doodler animation video, where the goal of that guy was to get enough money to buy a 3Doodler for the 3Doodler campaign and to create an animation. And we found it. We actually helped to fund him and put him in our updates. And we asked Kickstarter beforehand, is this cool? And they went, yes, that's cool because it's in your universe, which was weird because at the same time their rules say they can and can't. So it's fuzzy.
It's fuzzy. Ask.
Ask.
I guess that's
they will ask and they will give you a response.
And it may be the same on Monday as Friday.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I have a game that I'm developing at this point, and I'm interested in beta testing it. And I was wondering if Kickstarter would be a good place to do that online. And I'm just looking for like 100 people, and I'm hoping to get maybe $10 a piece. And it will be released as basically as a beta test. For $10, you can get a PDF file, print it up, you cut up. I mean, I've seen it other people do.
So my initial response.
You cut up the cards, you know, and stuff.
Yeah. So my initial response to that idea was no, I wouldn't do that. And then 30 seconds later, I thought, yeah, that sounds like a great idea. If you limited it, if you only allowed a certain number of people to back it, and as a part of the project, you told them that you were expecting them to help promote a Kickstarter to make the game real, you're kind of creating an interesting pool of people that can act as evangelists for a game that hasn't been released yet. Yeah, that's why I went from a no to yes. So I think that it might work. You know, the beauty of Kickstarter is that if the community doesn't like it, they just won't fund it. So there's no right or wrong. There's just a yes or no. I think I think there's a lot of creative things you could do with a group of beta testers that you got through Kickstarter. I think the hard part would be overcoming the community backlash. People saying, "I can't believe this guy is trying to get you to pay money for a beta test."
Yeah, because I mean, you're making an analog game, obviously. So analog games, man, playtesters are gold. I do lots of very nice things for my playtesters, the good ones, because they are hard to get. So now, if you had something that said, for $10 you get this PDF, and when the game launches for $60, your copy's free, then
it might work.
If we make it work. But I'll tell you this, just as a sort of off Kickstarter topic, playtesters are good ones are really hard to find.
Yeah.
You're going to get 100 people, if they're anything like my playtesters, and 3 will be worth anything. Everybody wants to think it's fun to be a playtester. It's hard. It takes work. You have to play with cards with no pictures and dice don't have the right icons on and stuff.
I need to write a report.
Yeah.
Okay, right here, Richard.
I'm not sure I understand how the exploding rewards work. How does a reward become more valuable when you said you can't change a reward after you stack?
That is a great question.
I have given someone $100 for the vampire level. I get 50 miniatures. Go.
Okay. So what you do is you tell the backers on the project page and through the updates that you are adding content to that reward tier that doesn't appear in the reward tier description. And then, as time goes on and the thing is more and more valuable, you probably have to create a little infographic to make it easy for people to see how much value has been added to that tier. You can add as much as you want to a reward tier without Kickstarter objecting. You can't take something away.
And you can't change the definition, the words you put in the reward tier. So, I'm getting my 50 figures, yay for me.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, the update says, you know, if we get to 100 grand, I'm going to add 5 figures for that.
Yeah, that's totally okay.
We get to 100 grand, I get 55 figures. Nothing's changed on the reward picking.
Yeah.
But in the update, it says I get 55.
Yeah.
Now I'm like, all right, if we get to 200, I get 70. I'm telling all of you, you got to get this thing in. We'll all get 70 figures.
Yeah.
And that happened with Bones, and it went from 50 to 280 figures. I bought 2 of 2.
Yeah. It's totally okay to add content to a reward tier, even if it's not reflected in the text. You just have a messaging problem. It's communicating that to people who are going to look at the reward text and not know additions have been made.
So people who aren't following the updates might end up getting a reward that they didn't know about.
Yeah, exactly.
Getting more than that.
Yeah, the last day of the Pathfinder Online Kickstarter, at 6 in the morning, I sent emails to every reward tier. You can send a message through Kickstarter to people who have backed the particular tier, all the people who backed the tier, for each tier telling them what was currently included in their reward tier, because we had added so much stuff that I knew that a lot of them had no idea how much value had been added, right? The bones thing was particularly easy, because they just had a big old graphic that showed the miniatures, and the graphic just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. It was really hard to miss the fact that they were doing this crazy thing. Yeah.
Do a search for that one. If you're interested, go to the Bones, B-O-N-E-S. It's still on there as a whole project. It's worth checking out. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, this guy right here.
Yeah, so I had a question about community backlash and just that messaging management. And as an extreme example, I think one of the interesting things to watch happen with Kickstarter as it grows and develops. And I don't even remember the name of it, but it's the documentary about the video games and feminism and all that. And aside from
Tropes versus women in video games.
What's that?
Tropes versus women in video games.
Exactly, that one. And that's a really interesting example because it's a Kickstarter that funded, but then it kicked off this entire community backlash from a community that wasn't even the target of it. And obviously I think that's one, again, outside of the product itself, where the internet has decided that it's essentially like this failed product if you talk to anyone and you read about it. But are there any examples where community backlash has gone back on a product and someone has recovered from it, and how have they? Because you have all these avenues. There is Kickstarter itself and Twitter and Facebook.
I guess I have a couple of responses to that. First response is that the internet furor around that video probably tripled the amount of people who will ever see it. It was absolutely not a failure. It was probably the best thing that ever happened to that video.
Right.
Probably a very uncomfortable experience for the person involved.
But then the messaging side of it.
Great marketing.
Right, but the messaging side of it is there isn't communication about the project. So you have people that, even just that point.
So Amanda Palmer, who as you probably know was the first person to raise $1 million for a music project, she did a thing on tour where they would ask local musicians to appear on stage with the Grand Theft Orchestra. So they would have like a horn section or cellos or whatever, because they don't travel with that. And those people were not paid. And the idea basically was, here's an opportunity to come to an Amanda Palmer concert and go on stage and play in front of X thousand people. You'll probably never have that opportunity ever. That's the trade, right? But she raised $1 million on Kickstarter, and there were a whole lot of people who said, what the fuck, Amanda?
Where's my cut?
Pay them $500 for being on stage, right? And I think that she did a pretty good job of confronting that. She actually did a TED Talk to confront that to some degree. I think that unlike the internet furor around the video, no one else would have probably watched it if it hadn't been for that thing. I think there were people who lost some respect for Amanda Palmer because they heard things about what she was doing and didn't really understand all the depth. And her response is about the only response you can make, which is she basically took to her blog and wrote a very detailed post to explain exactly what's going on. She had a lot of the people that had been those musicians talk about how they were so happy to have the opportunity and they never felt like they were being taken advantage of or whatever. So I think there's a huge community management function that goes along with the Kickstarter. And in any project, when you have crisis management, there's just a template these days created by Tylenol for the cyanide thing. You be very upfront, you're very honest, you take responsibility, you put the head of the organization out there to be personally, responsible.
So it's not any company that does anything, whether it's Kickstarter or not, all those things. During the campaign, though, there are things you can do that give you community backlash. But often those only happen on campaigns that are already successful. So Ouya. Right? So Ouya is widely successful, right? I backed Ouya when they had a limited reward tier of 5,000. And then 8 hours later, they raised it to 20,000, and then they raised it to 6,000. So the reason I backed it is I felt like I better back it now because that's going to sell out. I felt my little minor community backlash, and I said, I took my money back because I felt like they tricked me into buying. Did it hurt Ouya? Yeah, they're feeling my pain. I took that $100 back. But it did bug me. So there are things you can do during your campaign that can hurt. Post-launch, run a good business, make a good product, be a good person. It's going to suck or not suck. Kickstarter or not, it doesn't matter.
Do good work. Yeah, whatever they say in the Create Your Home campaign.
Yeah,
In terms of software, because software has a much longer development time, do you feel like you have to really be close to a launch before you do a Kickstarter? Because will people fund something that says, by the way, I have to say it won't be done for 3 years because even though it'll probably be done in 2, it's software?
That's a great question, and it is right in the ground zero of this panel, which is recent developments in Kickstarter. So the first wave of software projects were all ridiculously optimistic in the shipping dates. Most of them said they would ship in less than a year. Some of them probably will ship in less than a year, but most of them are not going to come anywhere close to shipping in less than a year. Most of them vastly exceeded their funding goals and then went into stretch goals. And so they could go back to their communities and say, because the project got so much bigger, we're going to be a little late. And it minimized the backlash, right? But I think that the backers are a little bit more savvy now, and they're more willing to understand that there are certain timelines for cycles for design. We had delivery dates for the Pathfinder Online Kickstarter of Q3 2016. So it can absolutely do that. I think you actually, at this point, I think you hurt yourself in the long run if you promise a delivery date that you know you can't make, and then you are constantly telling backers that there's been delays. I do think that there are certain people who are likely kind of ADHD, and like, if I don't get this in 6 months, I don't want it. And you're going to have to cope with that problem, but I would rather cope with the problem of telling somebody something that's true than having a bunch of really unhappy ADHD backers freaking out because they're not getting your game in 6 months.
And I would say if you want to know what you need to launch, if you have made a bunch of games before, you don't need to show as much stuff.
Yeah.
If you've never made anything, you better have something to show to say, this is what this game's going to be like. It can be as little as concept art, but the more you can show as an unpublished, unprofessional, but you know, yeah, I was one of the guys working on Call of Duty. There's like 8,000 of them now, but show
one more hand here. Yeah, go ahead.
So I have this group of friends. We're making one tabletop game. And I also have this other group of friends that's making another one. And I was just wondering, we were thinking about maybe taking both of those products and putting them into one project. And like you could back this one, or you could back that one, or you could back both at a discount.
Yeah.
And like, do you see any problems with that? Or
Yeah, I think it's horrible.
is the game of political elections and one is the game of political assassination. Or they both live in the same universe, so your messages are kind of close. Or they're connected in some way. If you win this game, it's like a campaign.
You don't want to do a campaign that says, pledge of this and get A, pledge of this and get B.
Yeah, the problem with this is going to be production. What if 85% of your people take A? And you have to make like a very clean number of copies of each, and they would still be much more
There was a video game
Kickstarter that was run by a couple of industry vets that basically had this pitch. We have 2 ideas for games, and based on funding, we're going to decide which of these 2 games to make. And it fizzled really, really badly. A fairly standard rule of marketing is you want to give people a really consistent, very clear message about what you're doing. So if you have A and B, right off the bat, you're not giving them a consistent, clear message, right? Help us fund to 11 games. We're guys who make games because we love games. That's a pretty clear message. But Kickstarter doesn't let you run Kickstarters for businesses, only for projects. So, you know, if Fund to 11 Games says, we're going to make 3 awesome games for girls, that might work. But
you have to buy all 3.
Yeah. But I think you're better off running Kickstarter A for A and Kickstarter B for B.
Plus, that gives you a chance to do one.
It's a half hour after this panel is supposed to be over. Do you have any place to be?
I don't. I can stay here for a little bit.
We have some drinks, we have some fun.
All right.
If anybody has any particular questions about board games, whatever, come on.
Yeah, we've got business cards and our email addresses are on the slide, and we can back that.
Don't forget, fairly mischief for
Sure.
girls because it's hard.
If the audio can.